Welcome back to the Open Mic Reunion Show, and I'm joined with my guest, Rashad Singletary, his wife, Robin Singletary, and his mom, Joy Boone. Let's give them a hand clap. Now, Rashad, your episode was one of the most viewed and one of the most touching because you tapped into a very dark place in your childhood with you being molested at the age of 5. What inspired you to now fully come out and share that story?
I would have to say that understanding that people are going through that same thing too, and a lot of people are living in a childhood traumatization as an adult, and some people have killed themselves, some people are still living and haven't forgiven themselves. And so I felt like with my faith and with my integrity and where I'd moved on in my own personal life, that if I could talk about it publicly to other people, that it might help them.
Now, part of your episode, you mentioned that at that age, the gentleman that molested you was one of your neighbors. So there was some trust built there in that relationship because y'all were in such close proximity. You shared that he forced you to perform and receive sexual favors for him. Why were you so comfortable sharing that part of the story?
I think I was comfortable sharing that part of the story because, I grew up in church where we didn't really talk about stuff. We just laid out burdens on the altar and gave it to the Lord. But then when you would go back home to reality, you still felt like you had to deal with that burden. And I think that the reason why we do lose people in church is because we're not open enough to talk about our stories. I was open talking about it because I felt like me being open and me being transparent with people would give them a voice, would give them an opportunity to feel like they could share what there is and be open about it as a man. Most black men keep things, within them because it's not masculine to talk about your feelings. But that's the reason why Baltimore looks like it looks now. If more men were taught to be connected with their feelings and to express verbally the frustration that they would have, that they haven't, it would be different. So that's why I felt open enough to talk about that.
Now, you also mentioned that part of that trauma was it made you question your sexuality. You had thoughts about whether or not you were gay or not. You were taken advantage of at the age of 5, so the power to choose was not left up to you. So why did you feel like you had to question whether or not you were a straight man or a gay man if that happened at such a young age and the power of choice was taken away from you?
Well, when I got older and I started understanding what sexuality was, and what also the culture says that male traits are, or should I say character traits. I wasn't athletic. I didn't like playing basketball, football. I liked preaching, singing, but I love women. Okay. But when I was growing up, my cousins were athletic. They did all that kind of stuff. I didn't like doing it. I don't even like it now. I only watch it because my brothers play it, But getting older and saying, okay, well, if that's how I'm supposed to be, then what is it? And then getting older and trying to figure out what was it about me that made him feel like it was okay to target me? Was I giving off something? Was I doing something? Like you said, as a victim, and in many of our conversation that we had tonight, it's a thing of trying to figuring out adult solutions with an adolescent perspective. And so once I became a man, because, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I did as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. So I put away my childish understanding or consciousness, and I began to grow as an individual, as a man, and realize, I'm not that way. Like you just said, that was something that was taken advantage of. I didn't have the ability to know right from wrong at that level, but I understood when I got older what it was and how I could grow from it.
Now, Joy, you and I talked offline about Rashad's episode, and the story behind that was that he went outside to go play. You told Rashad to stay in the front, and then he had wandered off, but you didn't know where he had went until the episode aired. How did you feel about knowing where he was, not knowing where he was, and then finding out where he was and what had happened to him?
As a parent, I felt like I let him down. Because I don't even think he was 5. And because that was the neighborhood that I grew up in, and when we grew up, it was called the Village of Purnell, and it was a fence around the entire community and a golf course beside it. So it was always our safe haven. Everybody grew up around there, the steps beside the house. If you sat on the steps, your parents were okay because everybody knew the steps were fine. So the same day that I can remember this, he wasn't even sitting on the steps. He was sitting out front in a chair where I said, I'm gonna run in the house, don't go anywhere. So I remembered it like clockwork. And like the night before it aired, I called Rashad and said, you have got to tell me everything that happened. I don't want to hear it tomorrow. I need you to tell me today because I need time to process it. And it was like, oh my God, I didn't have time to process everything. And I'm going to tell you now, if I ever see him, it's over. I love the Lord, but that episode took me back when I watched. I don't remember the movie, but I know everybody watched it. That's in here. It was when Mary was with Jesus and he was being beat until you couldn't recognize him, and you saw how she felt inside. That's the way I felt inside. But the difference is, it wasn't a multitude of people. It was one person. And I mean, I'm human. That's all I can tell you. I'm human. And yeah, I'm human.
Now, Robin, as his wife, how did you feel when you found out what had happened to him at such a young age?
Well, he had brought it up early on in our relationship, just kind of touched on it to let me know that that's something that had happened to it. Didn't go into a lot of details. It was probably maybe just a couple of sentences. And the first thing that I thought was just to be there as a support for him. There was, of course, anger, confusion. I wanted to know more. I wanted to ask more, but I wanted to be in a place where he could share what he wanted to as much as he wanted to. And if anything else came out later, he could be vulnerable enough to allow me to hear that. So at first I was thankful that he felt comfortable enough to tell me that. And then I wanted to make sure that I just supported him in any way through it.
In addition to that, one of the experiences he went through later in life was an addiction to sex and pornography. How did that impact y'all relationship or y'all marriage? How did y'all work through that? Was that something y'all are currently still working through?
So when we had a real conversation, because we talk about a lot of different things, and a lot of deep stuff, a lot of nasty stuff. It's just, that's how our relationship is. So when he brought up that he watched porn, and I'll be honest, I was oblivious to it, because I was like, you don't watch porn when you're married. I had a lot of my own, what is it called, like judgment about porn. And I put it on me in that sense. I was like, well, you got all of this, what you watching porn for? So I'm thinking, like, am I not doing something? When is he watching it? When I leave the house, is that when it's coming on? And, is he thinking that he wants me to do that sort of stuff? And when I got off of that mindset that, okay, it's all me, I would go back to, okay, what has he talked to me about? What does it have to do with the molestation? What things in his life has caused him to want to watch porn, and can we talk about that? Not talk about in our relationship or how it's going to affect me, how it's going to affect us, but how is it affecting you? What does it do for you? Is it something, what type of things do you watch? I was really just delving into it so that we could understand and he would feel comfortable enough to talk about it. That my questions were things that that he was able to hear my questions. And if I had curiosities, we may watch some things together. Like, just to be honest, so that, we understood it on a different level, so our relationship would go to a different level, just understanding it.
Anyone have questions from the audience?
So, Joy, when you said that if you ever come across him, it's over. So, could you help me with that? What do you mean it's over? Without saying something that's...
I'm not going to incriminate myself, but I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I haven't, till today, it's like the hardest thing to try to process. And I don't know. I don't know.
So, and I ask you that to say this as a mother, and as someone that always seen Rashad as one of my sons. So I want you to be able to learn how to let go of it and grow from it. Because if you ever run across him and something does spiral off, it's going to take him back into a place where he has learned to grow from. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you don't want to mess up your family because of what somebody in the past done. And as the word says, all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord. Whatever happened, God turned it around for his good. So I just want you to be able to hold on to that. Know God had him during that time and he still got him now and he got you. And then also think about this other one thing, that when people do things in life, we don't know why they did it. Was that young man sexually assaulted? Was it a spiral down effect that caused him to do what he has done? Rashad, I just want to say I'm proud of you. I'm proud of how you have grown. I'm proud of how the man that you have become. I watched you grow from a young child to where you are at now. I never knew about that until Mikey told me when he was doing the episode, and I'm glad that you made it. Robin, thank you for standing by his side, and thank you for helping him get through everything he's working through.
I'm gonna go first, sis. Do you all have children? Okay. So the reason why I ask that is because I know that a lot of times we can carry our trauma into our parenting, and that developing that relationship with our children. Is that something that you sometimes think about, or you maybe have some self-talk about those type of things? About, of course, when you have your child, that's one of the main things you're going to want to do is protect them. But is that something that haunts you sometimes, like that conversation, what it's going to be like, and even having to raise a child, knowing that you can't be with them 100% 24/7?
Well, my mother's a single mother, and it was me and my brother, and I'm 6 years older than him. And so we moved to Virginia Beach when I was 11. And so, my brother was 6 years younger than me. And so I used to get anxiety in school because I was worried about my brother and I was worried about my mother, based upon not even really putting the two together, just trying to figure out why am I so nervous for my little brother to be out of our sight, not at home. And so I worked through that because I think they were trying to put me in like a little class and all this kind of stuff because my anxiety was that bad where it was messing me up in school, and I was in elementary school, And then for my brother to get older and then have a daughter, and he's away playing basketball in Europe, and so my niece is staying with us. And so, even being protective of my niece and watching this and don't go over here, even other family members, don't go over their house, just because. And we've had those conversations about, us having children and how that's going to impact us. And my thing is, I'm thankful that I've worked through some of the trauma that I've induced myself, because I don't want that generational curse to hit my child when my child comes susceptible to being around that. I want my children to be able to live fulfilled lives, be free, and not feel like, well, dad ain't gonna let me do nothing because, and not know why I'm that way. And so, I'm glad I got the wife I have, because she'll allow me, can I say this? She knows who I am in private. And so she can minister to me in ways other people can't, which will help me as a parent.
We have a question for Tia, and then one more question in the back, and then we'll be wrapping up.
My question is for Rashad. So, trying to sum this up in the quickest way that I can. You have a lot of men that are insensitive to these type of topics. Do you feel like you'll ever reach out and do some type of outreach work when it comes to speaking on these type of things? Because some men will never speak on it because they'll think it labels them as being gay because it happened to them. So do you feel like this is something that you will want to speak on?
Well, and I can't help it. I love the Lord and I know the word. And the word says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. The blood never lost its power, but the saints ain't talking. And so it's my responsibility, because I've lived through it, to talk to people to help them come out of what they're going through. I don't question my sexuality. I'm a man just like any other man. And I feel like real men don't scrutinize each other. We learn how to uplift one another where they are. And the crazy thing is, I got more of my thug cousins who live in Cherry Hill. Them niggas was calling me and said they was going, where you at? You know what I'm saying? I actually got more scrutiny from my church homeboys, because I shouldn't talk about that because of who I am and what I stand for in church. And my problem is, if I don't talk about it, how other people get healed from it. And so it happened to me, like, Aunt Linda said, it happened to me because maybe God trusted that I would heal from it and that I wouldn't keep it to myself and that I would talk to somebody. So yeah, that's something that I would like to do, and I'm thankful that Mike did this, because it gives us that license to feel like we can drive in that lane.
Hello. First of all, I do want to say that I appreciate your testimony, Rashad. I know we have a really good relationship, so it's nice to know your story, because like you said, a lot of people do not speak about it and won't speak about it. I'm going to keep it short. Do you have any triggers, anything that you feel like sometimes make you just maybe have to sit down and recollect?
I had one trick. I was working at the post office in Magathy Bridge when I was 18 years old, and this I found out I had a trigger or I knew anything. There was somebody who smelled like him. And I was literally, like walking around doing my thing, and I got the whiff of the smell, and I got sick at work. My eyes got watery. I felt like my stomach dropped to the bottom of my feet. I had to drive home because I couldn't work. I couldn't work. And I didn't know that I had put that somewhere inside of me where I never got over it. I just let time numb it. So on my way home, I cried and all that kind of stuff and yada, yada, yada. I don't have triggers now, or if I do have a trigger, if it is a trigger, I'm glad that I've overcome that. I think that the one thing that, I think people should do is go to counseling. It is good. Spiritual counseling is good, but it's also good to go to professional counseling as well, because professional counselors have the training in order to help you through your process. So, I'll say this too. I got so many DMs and text messages from people I didn't even know who knew me, who said, I'm so glad you talked about that, because now I can talk. I had a coworker who went to school with my mother who DM'd me and told me about her story, and that she never said anything to her mother. She's 53. And she finally had that conversation with her mother. So I feel like I got over it, and whatever triggers I had gone, because now people are able to overcome what they're going through in any kind of age.
Let's give Rashad.
I wanted to say one thing too. I had one of my neighbors call me, and after she saw it, and she said that, you know, it happened with her stepfather, and even after she told her mother didn't believe her. And when she saw the segment, she just said how it brought back so many bad memories. And she said, you know, I'm just so grateful, you know, that he talked about it. She said, now I can talk about it. And she just started talking about it. And I just started listening because I knew then she needed that ear. So I listened the entire time. But, you know, I just wanted to tell her I believed her. I don't know if that helped, but at that time, that's what I felt like I needed to do. Let her know that somebody believed her. And, you know, when we got off the phone, she just thanked me and, you know, hung up. And that's when I told Rashad, you know, even though I'm still processing it, you know, he was helping people. So at the end of the day, it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Rashad, I feel like your story was the most impactful episode for me out of everybody. When it comes to men talking about sexual abuse and sexual assault, like you said earlier in your introduction, it's something that we don't do and that we shy away from. I have a fact for you. Around the time that there was a lot of things going on in the Catholic Church with sexual abuse and sexual assault, they said that young men are the easiest victims for sexual abuse because in the end, we'll never talk about it, right? So my question for you is, and I'm a father, right? I have a son. What advice would you give to parents? And then what would you say to children, or actually boys, to prepare them for maybe experiencing something like that? Or how can you even prevent something like that from happening?
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't thought that deep into it, but you're making me think about it. I think that we have to get back to the place where men get back in place. I think that it's a taboo for us to talk about it because we always say, well, women are emotional, they talk about stuff and all that kind of stuff. But at the same token, I think that it behooves us as men to know who we are so that we can train our sons how to be men. And not being masculine to say how many women you slept with, you know, how you walk and all that kind of stuff to make it, you know, applicable to you being a man. But I think that having a father in sons' lives help them to make sure that they're more alert. I'll say that. And I think that it's a great thing when someone sees that you're in your son's life. Because I also believe, too, that a lot of times those same young men who do get targeted are getting targeted because they see that there's a lack of a male figure. And just like my sister talked about earlier, you know, girls need their fathers, but boys need their fathers, too. Not only to teach them how to be men, but also to make sure that they protect them. And show them how to be men. So what I would tell a father to his children, to his sons and daughters as well, is to make sure that you have a line of communication with your children. Mm-hmm. Don't be a provider and be present, but never be emotionally or there, or never be a person who doesn't talk to your kids. Be open. And I would say to kids, don't ever be afraid to tell somebody something. Don't ever be afraid. Your voice counts, even as a child. So that's what I would say.
Let's thank Rashad, Robin, and his mom for that segment. I want to thank all the guests that participated in this series, all that are here. and even those that couldn't make it due to some schedule conflicts. I want to thank our hosts, Poppy's Cuisine Baltimore. Be sure to follow them on social media at Poppy Cuisine Baltimore. As we bring this reunion show to a close, it is important for us to remember that although we are all different, we have one thing in common, and that we all have a story. My story may not be your story, and your story may not be my story, but we're all currently going through something that the world knows nothing about. One of the keys to overcoming those difficulties is understanding that life happens. We always cannot control what is written in our story, but we can control how our story ends. Even though we had a rough beginning, we still have the ability to have a happy ending. Telling our story gives others hope and a reason to believe. I'm your host, Mike Banks. This is Open Mic, releasing so others can receive.